date is February 27, 2026. For 2 months, the world has watched a staggering military buildup in the Middle East, a deployment of force unseen since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Yet, on the surface, the whispers of war are being drowned out by the polite language of diplomacy. In Geneva, Iranian and American negotiators move between rooms, guided by Omani mediators who claim that a breakthrough on the nuclear crisis is within reach. The global markets, desperate for stability, cling to every word of optimism. But while the diplomats are talking, the warriors are positioning. In the silent corridors of the White House, the atmosphere has shifted from pressure to execution. For the first time since the crisis began, Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of United States Central Command, has entered the Oval Office. He is not there for a routine briefing. He is there to present the final strike options to the president. The transition from a reluctant warrior's posture to a surgical strike mindset is complete. The strategy is built on a foundation of absolute deception. While the world's gaze is fixed on the negotiation tables in Switzerland, American military planners are executing a masterpiece of misdirection. To the west, B-2 Spirit stealth bombers take off from Whiteman Air Force Base, heading toward Guam. To any satellite or radar operator in Russia or Iran, it looks like a routine shift toward the Pacific. But this is a decoy. A second flight of bombers is already moving east across the Atlantic in radio silence, refueling in the darkness of the high atmosphere. In Israel, F-22 Raptors sit on the tarmac, not hidden, but displayed in a way that suggests they are grounded for maintenance. Even the Israeli cabinet members are kept in the dark, issued classified red phones, and told to maintain a routine that suggests nothing is imminent. This is the quiet before the greatest aerial assault in the history of the modern Middle East. The logic is simple but brutal. If you want to destroy a regime that has spent 47 years preparing for this moment, you do not give them a warning. You give them a ghost. By 9:45 in the morning on February 28, the deception reaches its climax. It is the start of the Iranian work week in the middle of the holy month of Ramadan. In Tehran, the leadership feels a false sense of security, believing that the ongoing talks in Geneva provide a diplomatic shield. They are wrong. At that exact moment, the skies over Iran erupt. 200 Israeli fighter jets, in the largest military flyover in the history of their nation, launch a synchronized assault alongside United States forces. This is Operation Epic Fury. This is Operation Roaring Lion. 500 targets are identified across 9 cities. But the primary focus is not the missile batteries or the naval bases. It is the political and security nerve center of the Islamic Republic. The goal is decapitation. The intelligence community has identified a target of opportunity that cannot be ignored. A meeting is taking place in downtown Tehran. The supreme leader, the head of the Revolutionary Guards, and the defense minister are all in one compound. The Americans and Israelis choose to strike in broad daylight, violating every traditional military norm to ensure that the head of the snake is removed before it can even realize the strike has begun. Behind the scenes, the sheer scale of the operation is breathtaking. 2 carrier strike groups, the USS Gerald R. Ford and the USS Abraham Lincoln, are already in position. Over 125 aircraft are in the air. Tomahawk cruise missiles are launched from the sea, programmed with terminal precision to hit specific addresses inside the Iranian capital. The air is thick with the sound of incoming munitions, but the Iranian air defense systems remain silent. They have been systematically blinded by days of cyber attacks and electronic warfare. The integrated defense network, built over decades with Russian assistance, is suddenly a collection of useless hardware. The first explosions rock Tehran, and for the first time in 36 years, the absolute authority of the supreme leader is not just challenged, but physically shattered. This is the moment the military backbone of Iran begins to break, and as the smoke rises, the world realizes that the Middle East it knew yesterday is gone forever. As the smoke clears over the smoldering ruins of downtown Tehran, the true magnitude of the decapitation strike becomes chillingly clear. For 36 years, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was described by intelligence analysts as the superglue, keeping the intricate, multi-layered system of the Islamic Republic together. He was not merely a figurehead. He was the final arbiter of Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missile strategy, and its vast network of regional proxies. Now, that central pillar has been violently removed. Israeli sources, quickly followed by confirmation from the United States, have declared the supreme leader dead following a massive strike on his fortified compound. This was not a random act of war, but a meticulously planned operation that targeted the very heart of the Iranian regime's leadership during a rare moment of vulnerability. The details of the assault on the compound reveal a level of tactical precision that has stunned military observers. Approximately 30 precision bombs were dropped on the Supreme Leader's residence alone, tearing through layers of reinforced concrete that were designed to withstand a nuclear blast. Although Khamenei was reportedly underground at the time, Israeli intelligence suggests he was not inside his designated deep bunker, leaving him fatally exposed as the complex collapsed on top of him. This was what military planners call a target of opportunity. Intelligence had confirmed that between 5 and 10 of Iran's most senior military and political figures had convened at the site for an emergency meeting. By striking in broad daylight on a Saturday morning during Ramadan, the joint forces achieved total tactical surprise against a leadership that never expected such a brazen daytime assault. The carnage did not stop with the Supreme Leader. In a single morning, the Islamic Republic's entire command structure was effectively severed. Among the confirmed dead are Abdul Rahim Musavi, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, and Mohammad Pakpour, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard's primary military force. Also eliminated were Defense Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh and Ali Shamkhani, a senior advisor to Khamenei who had survived previous assassination attempts. Reports indicate that 40 senior commanders and regime figures were killed in the opening strikes on Tehran alone. This was the A-team of the Iranian regime, the men who managed the day-to-day operations of the axis of resistance and the internal security apparatus. Their loss creates an immediate and profound vacuum in command and control, leaving the remaining elements of the Revolutionary Guards paralyzed and leaderless in the midst of an ongoing war. While the leadership was being decimated in the capital, the military backbone of the nation was being systematically dismantled across the country. The United States military, under Operation Epic Fury, launched 900 strikes in just 12 hours. These strikes were not focused on people, but on the hardware that makes Iran a regional threat. Using B-2 stealth bombers and Tomahawk cruise missiles, the joint forces targeted 500 different locations, focusing on ballistic missile sites, nuclear infrastructure, and naval bases. The goal was to neutralize Iran's ability to respond before the first retaliatory missile could even be fueled. The precision was so extreme that one analyst described the operation as a wildly bold daytime attack that catching the senior leadership completely off guard. Iran's regional proxies, which Khamenei had spent decades building into a deterrent shield, were left watching in silence as their benefactor was dismantled in real time. The shock waves from this morning have not just hit Tehran. They have reached every corner of the Middle East, signaling that the rules of engagement have changed forever. The decapitation of the central leadership did not result in an immediate silence from the Iranian military. Instead, it triggered a desperate and indiscriminate lashing out known as Operation True Promise 4. Within hours of the initial strikes, the remnants of the Iranian command structure launched a massive wave of missiles and drones intended to set the entire region on fire. This was not a focused military response, but a strategic attempt to impose such a high cost on the United States and its regional allies that the political will to continue the campaign would evaporate. Iran targeted 7 different countries simultaneously, proving that even a wounded regime retains a lethal reach. In the United Arab Emirates, the capital city of Abu Dhabi became a front line. The Ministry of Defense there confirmed that it had to engage and destroy 132 ballistic missiles and 195 Iranian drones in a single day. While the advanced defense systems worked tirelessly, the sheer volume of the saturation attack meant that the consequences were unavoidable. Debris from intercepted missiles rained down on residential neighborhoods, and in Abu Dhabi, one civilian, a Pakistani national, became the first confirmed fatality from the retaliatory fire. The psychological impact on the Gulf states was profound, especially in Dubai, a global hub of commerce and tourism that has long prided itself on being a beacon of stability. Tourists looking for winter sun were met with the terrifying reality of modern warfare as drones and missile debris struck iconic landmarks. The Fairmont Hotel on the Palm Jumeirah was hit, with a large fire erupting at its entrance and injuring 4 people. Even the facade of the world-famous Burj Al Arab was damaged by falling debris. For the first time, the war had touched the luxurious heart of the Emirates, forcing the evacuation of the Burj Khalifa and causing a total closure of the regional airspace. In Qatar, the Al Udeid Air Base, which houses 10,000 American personnel and serves as the forward headquarters for United States Central Command, was targeted directly. Doha shook under multiple salvos as 65 missiles entered the country, causing widespread panic and forcing the government to suspend all public events and gatherings. Beyond the glitz of the Gulf cities, the retaliation struck at the very heart of American regional power. In Bahrain, the Jufair district, which serves as the headquarters for the United States Navy's 5th Fleet, came under fire. Residents reported loud, terrifying blasts as drones and missiles were intercepted over the naval facilities. Even Saudi Arabia, which had privately lobbied for a decisive strike against the Iranian regime, found itself in the crosshairs, as explosions were heard in Riyadh and the eastern provinces. This widespread aggression was designed to prove that no corner of the Middle East would be safe as long as the Islamic Republic was under assault. However, the cost of this retaliation was not borne only by American allies. The people of Iran suffered a devastating blow as well. The most harrowing tragedy of the day occurred in the southern Iranian town of Manab. A girls' primary school was struck by an airstrike during the height of the school day. The death toll in this single incident rose to over 100 children, leaving families buried under the rubble of what was meant to be a place of safety. While the United States began an immediate investigation to determine if the tragedy was the result of a stray missile or a tragic targeting error, the image of the destroyed school became a somber reminder of the human cost of a war of choice. In total, the Iranian Red Crescent and state media reported that over 200 people had been killed across the country on the first day alone, with 747 more injured. The military backbone of the nation had been broken, but as the fires burned from Tehran to Dubai, it was clear that the region was descending into a chaotic and unpredictable new chapter, where everyone, from diplomats to schoolchildren, was caught in the line of fire. The date of the aerial abyss was February 24, 2026, when an F-35C Lightning II, call sign Reaper 1, encountered 6 Iranian 4E Phantoms 60 miles southwest of Bushehr. To the Iranian pilots, these Phantoms were mechanical masterpieces, kept airborne for 47 years through scavenged parts, cannibalization, and ingenious reverse engineering. To the American pilot, they were museum pieces with a pulse. The gap in technology between the generations of aircraft was not a hurdle to be overcome. It was an absolute abyss. Reaper 1 possessed a radar cross-section approximately the size of a marble, while the Iranian Phantoms appeared on radar as large as small trucks. In just 8 minutes of combat, the F-35 fired 6 missiles, achieving a 100% kill rate. The Iranian pilots, despite their thousands of hours of experience, were hunted by an invisible force they never detected, never tracked, and never targeted. Following the engagement, Super Hornets and Growlers struck Tactical Fighter Base 6 in Bushehr, destroying the remaining legacy fleet on the ground and erasing decades of Iranian mechanical ingenuity in a matter of minutes. 1/3 of Iran's entire operational fighter inventory vanished before the start of the next duty day. Simultaneously, the operation moved deep into the earth itself to answer a 40-year question. How do you destroy what has been built to be indestructible? The answer lay in the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, a 30,000-pound bomb designed specifically to reach hardened facilities buried 80 to 100 meters into solid rock. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers completed a grueling 37-hour round trip from Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, to strike the Fordo enrichment site. One specialized analyst at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency had spent 15 years studying this single target, mapping every ventilation shaft, exhaust signature, and fracture line in the mountain's geology. This analyst understood that the mountain could not be bombed from the outside. The bomb had to be sent inside the mountain. In a display of terrifying precision, the bombers threaded 5 bombs down a single ventilation shaft at speeds exceeding 1,000 feet per second. The resulting underground shockwaves, reflected and multiplied by the rock walls, were catastrophic for the thousands of centrifuges spinning below. While Fordo was the centerpiece of the strike, it was not the only target of Operation Midnight Hammer. At Natanz, Iran's largest enrichment center, a single B-2 dropped 2 bunker-buster bombs, targeting the underground structures housing the centrifuge cascades. Simultaneously, the guided missile submarine USS Georgia fired 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles toward Isfahan, the site where Iran's nuclear conversion facilities were located. These missiles, moving at supersonic cruise speeds with terrain-following guidance, struck with surgical accuracy. By the time the B-2 bombers turned around for their 19-hour flight home, the most consequential military strike in American history had been executed in less than 30 minutes. The surface craters left behind by the 30,000-pound bombs appeared deceptively shallow to satellite imagery, but the damage inflicted 260 feet below was absolute. The military backbone of the Iranian regime, its air superiority, its nuclear shield, and its underground fortresses had been dismantled with a level of precision that changed the global nuclear order overnight. The physical destruction of the leadership compound was merely the beginning of an internal collapse that had been decades in the making. By March 1st, 2026, the Islamic Republic of Iran was thrust into its most perilous succession crisis since the 1979 revolution, with over 40 upper echelon officials, including the supreme leader, confirmed dead. A black hole of authority opened at the center of the state. As per Article 111 of the Iranian Constitution, an interim leadership council was established during the interregnum. This council consisted of Alireza Arafi of the Guardian Council, Chief Justice Gholam Hossein Mohseni Ejei, Speaker of the Parliament Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, and President Masoud Pezeshkian. However, while this council was intended to provide a facade of continuity, the reality behind closed doors was a brutal struggle for survival between competing factions of the B team and the military elite. The most likely candidate to emerge from the chaos was Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, who had reportedly been appointed as a successor by Khamenei just 6 days before the strikes. Larijani, a veteran member of the establishment, was seen as a man who could potentially recalibrate policies while maintaining the regime's core. Opposing him were hardline elements within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, who were already signaling a transition toward a full military religious dictatorship. The IRGC, which answered only to the supreme leader, found itself leaderless after its top commander, Mohammad Pakpour, was killed in the opening salvo. Fearing a total loss of control, the paramilitary group threatened its most intense offensive operation ever, aiming to prove its relevance through external aggression even as its domestic foundations crumbled. On the streets, the mood was a volatile mix of terror and intoxicating hope. The Iranian people were still reeling from a month of unprecedented state violence. In January 2026, a massive wave of protests, sparked by economic grievances, had been met with a crackdown of historic brutality. Estimates suggested that between 5,000 and 36,000 civilians had been massacred by security forces and imported foreign militias from the axis of resistance. The memory of the January massacres was so raw that when news of the supreme leader's death broke, thousands of Iranians reportedly danced and celebrated in the streets despite the threat of further repression. Videos leaked through internet blackouts showed ordinary citizens laughing and chanting death to the Islamic Republic, seeing the foreign military intervention as the only deliverance from decades of clerical tyranny. However, the iron fist of the regime remained lethal. The Basij, the internal state police responsible for the January massacres, were deployed to suppress any attempt at a general uprising. For many Iranians, the social contract had not just been broken, it had been incinerated. They watched as their leaders hid in bunkers while civilian neighborhoods absorbed the shockwaves of the retaliatory fire they had invited. The IRGC exploited the state of war to tighten its grip, branding anyone who celebrated the strikes as traitors and Trump's helpers. As the Interim Leadership Council scrambled to find a permanent successor, the question was no longer whether the clerical system could adapt, but whether it could survive its own obsolescence. The military backbone was shattered, and the world waited to see if the people of Iran would finally seize the hour of their freedom or if a new, even harsher military junta would rise from the rubble. The destruction of the Iranian military backbone on February 28, 2026, has left the Islamic Republic in a state that many strategic analysts describe as beyond repair. In less than 24 hours, the sophisticated command and control network that took 47 years to build was surgically dismantled. The physical ruins of the Supreme Leader's compound and the headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are more than just craters. They represent the absolute failure of a defense doctrine based on underground tunnels and proxy deterrence. Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion did not just hit targets, they erased the very concept of Iranian invincibility. With the deaths of Ali Khamenei, Abdulrahim Musavi, Mohammad Pakpour, and Aziz Nasirzadeh, the regime has lost the collective memory and operational expertise of its entire senior command. The B team left in the wake of the strikes, led by the Interim Leadership Council, finds itself managing a nation where the central nervous system has been severed. The geopolitical consequences are already gapping violently upward, much like the global price of oil. Following reports of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point responsible for 20% of the world's traded oil markets have reacted with unprecedented volatility. Crude prices spiked 8% within 48 hours, and European natural gas prices soared by 20%. This is the war risk premium transforming into a global economic reality. The military backbone of Iran may be broken, but in its death throes, it has managed to choke the world's most vital energy artery. As tankers sit idle and insurance rates for the Persian Gulf become astronomical, the beyond repair moment for the Iranian military is threatening to push fragile global economies toward a deep recession. Regional powers like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, while privately celebrating the fall of their greatest rival, are now absorbing the direct costs of its collapse in the form of falling missile debris and disrupted trade. For the ordinary people of Iran, the cost of this broken backbone is measured in blood and uncertainty. The tragic destruction of the school in Minab, where over 100 children were killed, stands as a haunting testament to the limits of surgical warfare. While many Iranians took to their rooftops to celebrate the end of a 36-year dictatorship, the joy is tempered by the reality of a country without a clear future. The internet remains dark, and the Revolutionary Guard's remnants are using an iron fist to suppress the very people the United States and Israel claim to be liberating. The beyond repair status of the military has created a vacuum that could either be filled by a democratic awakening or a descent into a chaotic civil war that would haunt the Middle East for generations. Ultimately, the events of late February 2026 have marked the end of the Islamic Republic as the world knew it. The era of the axis of resistance and the clerical nuclear shield has been buried under the rubble of Tehran. Whether this leads to a generation of quiet or a new phase of chaos depends on whether the Iranian people can reclaim their destiny from the fragments of the military junta. The United States and Israel have proven they can destroy a backbone with terrifying efficiency, but they have yet to prove they can build a lasting peace. As the smoke continues to rise over the region, the only certainty is that the old order has been permanently, and perhaps tragically, shattered beyond all recognition.